Okay. Yeah. Okay, so hello guys. Hopefully you can hear us well. Let us know if you cannot hear us or the video is lagging. So finally, we are live from Vilnius from Open Coffee Club.
Okay, so hello guys.
And
Hopefully you can hear us well. Let us know if you cannot hear us or.
And now, today we'll have Jerry Young, a general partner of a hardware club, probably, or as we heard, the most prominent scaling platform for hardware startups. So do not hesitate to drop in questions. And I would like to also present our think tank member, Danielius Stasiulis, who is here today to moderate the session and also kind of help you with the questions if you are a little bit afraid to pop those in. So probably we can start.
Yeah, I guess, Janya, you did a great job, and you can moderate everything alone. But let's give the floor to Jerry, and let's hear him explain what he does, what's his background, and later on, let's start and dive in with questions.
Right. So I should start now, or?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Hi guys. I guess there are many people on the other side of the internet that I couldn't see the face. But anyway, this is Jerry again. So I'm Jerry Yan. I'm the general partner of Hardware Club. So Hardware Club is the most exclusive leading private community for the early stage hardware startups around the world. So over the past 14 months, actually, we launched in very healthy. So we have over the first 14 months, we have we review about 1,100, more than 1,100 startups. Eventually, we invited and onboarded about 150 startups. You can go to our website and you'll see the numbers. And among them, we invested in 7. So the purpose of the Hardware Club is basically, in the early stage, all the hardware startups, they face similar challenges. And so many of those challenges cannot be solved systematically because you don't have the people, you're a small team, you're trying to be, actually that's your advantage of being a small team and being flexible. But then again, you still have to solve the problem. It could be just as simple as like shipping the product to, I'm sorry, I have to, let me move my location. Like as simple as like moving the products, shipping the product to Japan or to another country, and or like basically passing some regulation, or sometimes the questions that most people raise is actually the crowdfunding. So we realized that because we've been doing investment in this field about starting from 3 years ago. And so we decided to create the Hardware Club. And so in the private community, because everyone is a very good entrepreneur, is selected by us, the best of them. So people can help each other, and this basically share some knowledges. And it's proven to be very, very effective, and people really love it. And then on top of that, we also bring free resources to our startup. So we have manufacturing and retail resources. In the manufacturing resources, we have signed more than 35 partnerships with basically some of the best EMS companies in the world. For example, we have 8 of the top 10 EMS companies in the world that are our partners. We have Foxconn, Pegatron, Best Buy, Foxconn, Pegatron, JB Electronics, you name it, Quanta, and something like that. And we also have the medium-sized one and the toy makers in Hong Kong. So in general, more than 35 of them. At the request of our startups who are going into manufacturing, we can do introduction for them absolutely for free. We don't charge anything to our members or to our partners. We also have retail partnerships. This is something that we do very differently from the other sort of like the hardware-focused investing institutions, is that we focus also a lot on retails. We believe that you have to be able to sell the product, because 90% of what we do at the Hardware Club is actually consumer electronics. You have to be able to sell the stuff, and to be able to, that's actually more difficult than doing like manufacturing. So we build partnerships with a lot of retailers and distributors around the world. In the United States, we have Amazon, Brookstone, Best Buy, Target, and a couple of others. The usual suspect. Here in Europe, we have like Media Saturn, so MediaMarkt, the largest consumer electronics distributors, retailers in Europe, as well as CTDM here in France, Fnac, and a couple of other distributors. We have we partner with Itochu, one of the largest companies in Japan for distribution in Japan, as well as a couple of other distributors. And in China, we work with JD.com. So for the products, for the startups that are already shipping or that are about to ship, ready to ship, then we'll do introduction depending on the country they want to break into. We do the introduction for them to be able to get in touch with the retailers and the distributors. So that's what we do at the Hardware Club. Our purpose is to find the best startups and invest in them and grow with them, help them scale to dominance. So always welcome if you guys are working on hardware products and you have the prototype, always welcome you to pitch to me. And I think John and Danielle have my emails. It's easy to reach to them. Yeah. That's the introduction of the Hardware Club. And I guess I'll just in general talk about the topic. I guess John, Danielle, and I chatted a little bit before we hop on this video conference, what I should be talking about. And the fact is, I think the hardware itself has so many different topics. It's actually, it's not something that you can talk like within 20 or 30 minutes. But I guess I'll start with something because some of you are probably already in the process of creating a hardware project, or you're already like actually a hardware startup. So there's a lot of misunderstanding in the world right now about hardware startups, and it's the topic can be there are many topics that we can touch on, but I think in general, if you have any doubt about yourself, about any hardware startup, any hardware project, what you should do is actually to take the successful hardware startups and look at them and see how they become successful, and that will become very clear. And so some of the most successful and the most successful ones would obviously be Fitbit, which IPO last year. So it's actually more successful than the other more famous ones like Nest or GoPro. But Nest and GoPro are also very successful. But even like from the Hardware Club, so we have the first member that exited, so it's Misfit Wearables. So that's also a very inspiring story because Misfit Wearables were late to the game. They were 4 years later than Fitbit in terms of wearables, but they were able to identify a real differentiation and execute very fast. And then within 4 years after their founding, they were able to grow the sales to a certain number and sold the company to Fossil Group for $260 million US. So by looking at the successful hardware startups, you'll be able to learn a lot. But I guess I'm just want to comment on a couple common misunderstanding that might help you clarify things a little bit. So the first thing is that, I mean, manufacturing and distributions are quite difficult, especially for startups that you don't have the connection, and sometimes the startups are funded by experienced people who are in, for example, in Taiwan, there are many hardware startups that were funded by people who used to work at Foxconn or Pegatron. But Actually, I think the better startups are funded by people who are not from those kind of backgrounds. And the reason is very simple, because we're in a world where it's much easier to create hardware products than before. And so creating it and manufacturing it, those are the kind of things that can be, it's kind of a manageable risk. So it's something that we have visibility, which means that everybody has visibility. And in terms of the VC language, it means that it's something that almost like everyone would be doing the same thing. The most difficult part is actually how can you create a product, especially in consumer electronics, how can you create a product that is people love it, that people just love your product. I mean, look at GoPro, like so many people buy GoPro and not a copycat. It's not because of the function, the price, or the performance. It's more like there's a perceived values in it, and people just love in general. People are in love with the brand GoPro, and that doesn't come easy, and it requires a lot of strategy and a lot of some of the luck. But if you don't achieve that, then you're just another copycat. So I guess the number one lesson is that I think the most important thing about hardware startup is if you're a consumer electronic hardware startups, how do you sell it? So how do you plan? What's your target consumers, and how do you market yourself, and sell your product at the price that you want them to buy? So not at a price that is complete competition that you're dictated by the market competition dynamics, but you have to be able to communicate your vision to the point where people are going to buy your products at the price you set. So that's the most difficult part. So that part is actually what we call the product market fit. So that's actually if you want to bring anything if you want to have any takeaway from this conference, just take that one. So how to prove the product market fit and continue to grow that product market fit is the most important challenge, most difficult challenge for the hardware entrepreneurs today, especially for consumer electronics. In terms of manufacturing and retail, those two are actually very, very old, let's say old games. So again, when we talk about manufacturing, I mean, you can go to Shenzhen or Dongguan, and there's like 1,000, 10,000 people who have experiences. So one thing that I want to advise you is do not see that as an insurmountable, let's say, challenge, and do not think that people who can solve that challenge will be successful in hardware startups. So that's very important. For example, a lot of people talk about Shenzhen all the time, and I actually wrote extensively about these kind of topics, and mostly in Chinese because I have a column in China, in Taiwan. But just for example, people talk about Shenzhen being like the paradise of doing like hardware startups, which is actually not true. So again, look at the successful ones. Look at the people that already exited the company. I mean, you look at Fitbit. Fitbit started in San Francisco, and their EMS company is electronics. This is not even a secret. You can go to their financial statement and look at that. So they started out with electronics, and they hang out with electronics for a long time. Electronics is still their largest EMS provider. They didn't go to Shenzhen. That's my point. GoPro started also in California, and then obviously the EMS company is the Taiwanese one called Chicone. So it's also the same EMS company for Dropcam. Again, they did not go to Shenzhen. Nest, they started in California, obviously, for multi-Apple people. And their EMS company is Pegatron. So, and the factory is not even in the Shenzhen area, it's in Shanghai. So you can find many more these kind of like the successful hardware startups. Their link to Shenzhen is usually very weak or non-existent. The only one successful hardware startup that is actually strongly linked to Shenzhen is DJI. So the king of the drone. So they own 90% of the market share. Annual revenue last year was like 1 billion. But the reason they're linked to Shenzhen is because it's a Chinese company that just happened to grow out of Shenzhen. And they're successful not because they're in Shenzhen, they're successful because they sell to the European and American market. So they monopolize the professional drone market. So if you take a sort of examination of that, then you kind of understand that, okay, like even for the Hardware Club senior member, like Misfit Wearables, it's an American startup co-founded by a Vietnamese immigrant and with factories in Vietnam. So this is something that you really want to take a deep look to. Is it really true that being in Shenzhen is gonna make you successful? So apparently the answer is there are more important questions to be answered. So coming back to my comment on manufacturing. So if you assume that if I can find a way to solve manufacturing problem, either in-house talent or outsourcing or working with whatever accelerator or whatever they say consultant, and you think that's the key to your business, then it's pretty much that you should probably just shut down your business because that's not gonna make consumers buy your product. So the consumers buying your product still relies on your product basically branding, marketing, and design, and whether you have truly created something that really attract the consumers. Okay, so that's one thing about manufacturing, but still it's very important. You cannot ship shitty product out of the door. That's not allowable, especially not for startups. I mean, you might be able to get by with Kickstarter, Indiegogo bakers who are more tolerant. They might be able to live with that. But once you're in the real channels, like your channel people will kill you. Your distributors will kill you if you're shipping if you have a very high field return rate or something like that, or you're just not having very good quality control. But again, those challenges are not new. Those are very old. One way or the other, a good venture investors that invest in your firm will find resources to help you resolve that. And in Hardware Club, we're already doing that. And so that's something that's visible and should be able to be resolved. That's my point. And it's the same thing with distribution. So in the old days, the startups don't have really connection. They won't be able to talk to systematically talk to the distributors or the retail stores that they want to sell their products at. I think that's also something that's very old. So how do you control the channel mix and all that? So doesn't require special talent. I mean, you can actually get this kind of talent. If you want to insource, you can get this kind of talent from many resources. That's actually to your advantage. So that kind of talent is actually easier to get compared to trying to find the next cloud engineer that can build something by themselves. That is very powerful. So overall, I would see manufacturing and distribution as, in venture capital terms, we call them risk. So risk can be managed. So risk is something that visible. You know, there's sort of like they could be different outcomes, but they can be managed with either human capital or financial capital with a certain methodology, and with the right investors, they'll help you manage the risk. On the other hand, the most difficult part I just talked about, that really differentiate a good startup and a very, very good startup that will be successful, like a unicorn, is actually what I just described, the product market fit. So how do you plan to persuade people to buy your product? And that's where you start to separate, the normal ones and the very, very good ones. For example, in terms of Nest, Google Nest. So when Tony Fadell started to build, the first product, was it really a smart thermostat? As many people would say it's a smart thermostat, but I would say it's not. And the reason I say it's not is because if it were just a smart thermostat, you just take a thermostat and make it smart. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's very straightforward. You have all the components, you can make it work. But Tony took all the pain to make it really beautiful. I mean, anyone who have ever seen the Nest thermostat, it's just gorgeous. It's very, very beautiful. And then so actually he also insisted on having the dial. So basically, any engineer would say, just put 2 buttons up and down, like any thermostat or any refrigerator, just put it up and down. But no, he insisted on creating a knob and very smooth mechanism. That particular thing caused them a lot of problem in the PVT process. So if you don't know what PVT process is, it's process verification phase. It's a phase, the last stage before you go into mass production. So to make sure that your design can sustain the process variation. And so that thing caused a couple of turnaround in PVT process. They have to change the design, modify, and allow it to be able to go into mass production. And so anyone, the normal entrepreneur will say, okay, fuck it, I'm sorry, sorry for the 4-letter word. I'm going to ship with a simpler design. It's easier, it's lower risk and all that. But no, Tony wanted that. He wanted that. I mean, this is an Apple guy, he would not take no for an answer. So there's a fine line there of like working between like perfect product and something that is like usable. But how much do you go? Do you want to risk the entire company running out of cash and all that? And so this is something that is make or break. But eventually they made it. So the first product was very, very beautiful, very successful. And it's given they created a brand new market and put themselves in people know that Google Nest is a company that is basically the leader of the smart thermostat, sort of like in American home market. So that's one thing. So, but that design decision, and both in terms of like you can even call it the philosophy of the company, that's actually the difference between Nest and the other copycat companies. So it's not just the first mover advantage. It's really a lot of things combined together. So that's actually the most difficult part. And that part, in financial terms, we call it uncertainty. So that's actually where entrepreneurship come in. Entrepreneurship is not about solving operational challenges and hiring someone to do something that they already been doing for a long time. Entrepreneurship is basically about creating sort of like a team that's moving in the direction that actually no other people is moving towards. And that's very, very difficult. And as an entrepreneur, that's actually what separates you from the other people, because this is your entrepreneurial region. It's not about creating something that maybe people will need it or people don't need it. It's really creating a company that has a core value, and everything you do, including the product, the services, and your human resources, the way you run the team, should be built around that. So that's the part where VCs are putting money into. So when VCs put money into a company, it's about, especially a hardware company, it's about the team that are truly convincing in terms of the vision, the kind of new world they are trying to create. This might sound like Huffy, kind of thing that that people say, oh, okay, that's another VC, that's bullshit. But look, I come from the R&D background, so I know very well the engineering side, what it feels like to be building engineering excellent problem. But in general, you just check the facts. So if you look at the successful startups, usually they are not just a product or service. It's not like I can do this as well. It's not even like first mover advantage most of the time. It's actually a lot more about that. So I guess that's in general the most. So keep it in mind. So you have the uncertainty, which is the or the entrepreneurship part, or the product market fit part. You have the risk that can be managed. So manufacturing, distribution, how do you get in touch with it? Try to understand that. So don't have any false understanding, so any false thinking that, oh, if you solve the manageable risk part, then you'll be successful. That's not true. And there are many people in the system right now that think that way. Always focus on the most, as a co-founder, if you're a co-founder, always focus on the more difficult part, which is basically what's the core value of your company and how do you persuade the consumers to buy your products at the price that you're asking them for. So this is the where you really win out. Yeah, in general, so that's basically the whole picture.
Could you tell us a bit more about some success cases that you had with your hardware club companies, and how exactly you have helped them? You know, what was their philosophy that you helped develop?
Okay, so good question. So basically, Hardware Club is only around for 14 months, and the senior member, we focus on early stage investment. So by default, many of them are still in seed round, Series A, or even entering Series B. So in terms of success stories, it's relative term, but we do have like misfit wearables that didn't successful exit last year. But we couldn't take credit for that. It's mostly Sony that was driving the company forward, but in a very fast speed. But just in general, the kind of thing that we do for our staff. So other than what I just talked about, for example, in terms before you don't have access to most of the manufacturers and most of the retailers, and now you do. And then it's really the entrepreneurs that have to learn fast and really be humble and be able to handle these multilateral relationships, which is not necessary in a lean startup like the mobile or internet startup. But on the other hand, also in terms of like the sort of like in general entrepreneurship. So for a startup to go through different stages of funding and be able to be successful, it has a lot to do with the ability to do fundraising. So a lot of time you see a startup that can raise a successful round, but then in the next round they sort of die because they actually raised the previous round from the wrong kind of investors, which means that this is one lesson for you. So if you don't already know it, you should know it. You should hear it from me. Every round of your fundraising is not just about money. So every round of fundraising, especially starting from seed round, it should lead to the next round. So basically, the seed round investors should be either they're already like many of the big VC firms, they do seed round because so that they can understand the startup better, so that they can do the A round investment, which is much bigger ticket size. So seed round investors should be able to take you to A round, and with a couple more new investors. And the A round investors should be able to take you to the B round with a couple more new investors, and like that. So you should never believe that $1 US is the same everywhere. So $1 US, this is the difference between smart capital and let's say dumb capital. So $1 coming from different kind of investor, it has different meaning. And sometimes if you take the wrong investors and the investors are actually free riders, in the next round, maybe the real investors don't want to join because there's a free rider in there. So there's a lot of things about it. So there's a very good book about this. It's Brad Feld. I think it's called Venture. I think it's called Venture Terms or whatever. Just go to the Amazon to look for that, Brad Feld. So go through that and try to understand it a little bit, what it means by raising money and in general. And so that's actually key to one of the keys to the success of your startups. If you don't understand that, then it's very likely you have a lot more challenges compared to even if you have a very good product and very good traction. Yeah.
Okay, so talking about the smart money, as you have mentioned, so who are the smart investors in Europe?
In terms of hardwares?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess us. No, so there are a couple of like I couldn't call names, but in general, I think we are still kind of like in the early stage of. There's some success. So look at the success. So if you look at the success of hardware startups, look at their investors, and you'll be able to get a picture of what kind of people are successful investors in these startups. But sometimes they stumble into it because we are still looking at sort of like this is different from the lean startup. So lean startup today, over the past 10 years, they have already produced a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and and the entrepreneurs, they successfully exited, and the company IPO, they sold the company. 2 or 3 years later, they left the company and they joined the venture capital firm and become a managing partner. So in the lean startup side, already you have enough like momentum, enough volume of those investors that have been there and done that, and to be able to find hopefully the next unicorn, invest in them and help them, give them the smart capital. We are still at a fairly early stage in terms of the let's say on the hardware side, because this is a fairly new recent phenomenon that people can create hardware and sell them to consumers directly. So I don't think there's a consensus on who are the best sort of like investors in different stages in hardware startups. There are some investors that got a lot of return because they invested in Fitbit, they invested in GoPro, they invested in Nest. But it's not systematic. It's not like they know how to deal with it. Sometimes they just bump into the deal and then somehow it's gonna get clearer and clearer in the next 3 to 4 years, and hopefully Hardware Club will be a key part, especially in the pre-seed and seed stage. We want to be part of that smart money system that people really look up to, and the first thing they think about is to come to us. We're already doing similar things, so we have been working with a lot of like larger VC firms, and in terms of follow-up investment and all that. And so the way we do things is that upon our investment or upon joining the club, and if we understand the startup, really like it, either we do the investment or even if we don't do the investment, then we'll still for the follow-up stages, we'll depend on the startup profile, we'll refer them to the other VCs that are doing A round, B round, C round that will in different countries. So we have such sort of a very close relationship with some of the better investors in the system right now. But I think 5 years later, if we look at the system again, you'll see the picture much clearer. I think right now the ecosystem looks a little bit like in 2005 and 6. I remember when I got to the United States in 2010, that was when all the VC firms were winding down their investment in semiconductors. So they're all leading semiconductor. So that's 2010. Which means that in 2005 and 6, 7, people are still putting money into semiconductor. And so at that time, when people are still putting money into semiconductor, already the lean startup movement is forming. So that's the beginning of the first couple of years of lean startup movement. So it wasn't that clear back then to many of the investors, but today it's the norm. So I think in 10 years, investing in hardware will become a norm again, and we're just at the very first stage of 3 or 4 years of having hopefully formulating that ecosystem and accompanying the startups to become successful.
So now, as not many, let's say not all the investors are investing in hardware, entrepreneurs in the hardware field found ways to circumvent investors going to such platforms as Indiegogo or Kickstarter. So what do you think Kickstarter plays the role in the whole ecosystem?
Okay.
And how should a startup proceed?
Okay. This is a good question. So I think Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they're one of the main reasons that this is happening right now. So, but I wouldn't say it's about fundraising. So I think as entrepreneurs, you definitely have to understand that Kickstarter and Indiegogo is not about fundraising. It's about pre-order sales. Okay, so it's about, instead of using VC money to go into manufacturing of your first batch, now you're using the consumer's money. So they buy your products in advance, they pay you in advance, and you go into production. If you think about it as fundraising, you probably would make a lot of wrong decisions. Okay, so the consumers today do not give you money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo so that you can develop your project. No. They give you money because they want to receive their product, hopefully at the deadline that you announced. So in other words, it's actually more like working capital than sort of any kind of funding that goes into development or something like that. So today, especially today, I think after last year there was a lot of scandals. Like some of the startups weren't able to ship their products, and some of them just ran away. So especially going forward, you definitely have to be have to have a working prototype and be very close to going to do manufacturing for you to be able to do a successful Kickstarter Indiegogo. On the other hand, Kickstarter and Indiegogo are inseparable. So this is what I say. What I say that you shouldn't treat it as a capital. So Indiegogo and Kickstarter have many more meanings compared to just simple money, just money. So the more important things for you as an entrepreneur is that this kind of crowdfunding platform, they provide a couple of things that you usually don't have. One of the things is the product market fit test. So this is one thing. Remember, I talked about the uncertain part, the real entrepreneurship. In the old days, 10 years ago, there's no way you can test for product market fit because of a hardware product. Because by the time you build the whole thing, spend the money and ship it to the market, and you realize nobody wants it. that sort of inventory is like it has to be written off. But today you have Kickstarter where as of today, if you have a prototype, you can actually test that. You can actually test if people will be willing to pay for this price to buy it. So speaking about price, that's the second most important thing about Kickstarter and Indiegogo. That you can test your pricing. So pricing is one of the most important, most difficult things in consumer electronics, in consumer products. And in the old days, you don't really have that. So when you ship the products, after you ship it, then you have to, you realize it's too expensive, and then you have to discount. You realize it's too cheap, and then you sold out without making enough money. So that's always the difficult part. And now you can, when you do Indiegogo, Kickstarter, you have like different time slot. You have like super Liber, you have like different bundles. That's actually a mechanism. If you design it right, it'll help you understand how people perceived your product in terms of pricing. That'll help you drive your the strategy of your operation. And the third thing is obviously what I just mentioned. So working capital. So this is actually working capital. This is not VC money. So this is not supposed to go into further developing the project or something. This is supposed to be going into production. Don't mistake that. And the fourth thing is actually PR. So obviously, if you're successful, you get a lot of PR coverage, which is could be quite expensive if you have to pay for it. But then again, today I think the bar has been it's risen so high that you actually have to spend some PR money before you can get a successful campaign. But that's a different story. So think about Kickstarter and Indiegogo definitely not as a replacement of venture investment, but more like an enabler of hardware startups. And so take the view about testing product market fit, testing price, acquiring PR, and acquiring working capital, and then you're in good shape. So then you have the right understanding about Kickstarter and Indiegogo in general. There's another form of crowdfunding that people start to talk about, which is equity crowdfunding. Basically, I'm not a big fan of that, and the reason is because actually, pretty much if you raise like equity crowdfunding, it's pretty much kind of difficult for you to raise VC money afterward. And the reason is very simple. So VCs are very sensitive to the existing shareholders. So you're seeing the movie Social Network. So I think everybody saw the movie The Social Network. If you haven't, you probably want to. And you remember the Golden twins that were the Harvard rolling team that filed a lawsuit against Facebook and got a lot of money out of it. So they are not even like angel investors. They just basically are someone who were involved, has some proof that they were involved. So that's the thing. If you have a lot of like really amateur, and a lot, I'm talking about a lot. I mean, 3 or 4 is already like a handful. But you have like 100, 200 investors that have a very small stake in your company, but they can actually they don't have anything to lose. They only put a small amount, maybe $1,000 or $2,000, even worse than angels. But then by the time you become successful, you're on the brink of becoming successful. They actually realize, oh, okay, then I can use my right to do something that. And you never know. And some, like in the case of like the twin brothers against Facebook, I mean, everybody knew that they don't even have any like real proof that, but just marginally, and they would be able to let's say interrupt the operation of Facebook and sort of get a negotiation position and get something for themselves. And so I guess my point is that most of the real venture investors would look at the cap table if they see like equity crowdfunding of like 200 shareholders. They might even just pass just because of that, because it's too messy. If anything goes wrong, it's just not worth it, not worth the risk, basically. But that's just my opinion. So if you don't really absolutely have other choices, I mean, why not? I mean, you still have to find a way to. But at some point, you probably want to clean the table. So maybe you want to buy back the equity crowdfunding people, maybe hopefully with A round money or B round. You have to think about that. But if you keep like 100, 200, 300 shareholders on your book, like relatively small amount all the way till B round or C round, pretty much it's going to be very messy. Yeah.
Following on this Kickstarter question,
yeah,
investors are actually requesting startups to make Kickstarter appear to invest seed money. In this case, it creates a risk of underperformance, so the startups not being able to deliver on the promise to customers. So,
yeah.
do you think it's a norm right now, or it's something that could be changed?
I tend to think that it's a problem. I tend to think that, so it's definitely a problem right now because you see even Kickstarter is, if I understand your question correctly, so startups that cannot ship products. So I can give you sort of like, let's say, pulse measure right now. Starting from last year, I think most of the VC firms in Europe, in the United States and in Europe, they want to see the startup shipping the product before they do the A round investment. So for Series A, you have to have already shipped the product. In general, there's definitely exceptions, but in general. So coming back to that, so which means that as a startup, you might, if you're lucky, you might be able to do a good Kickstarter and then a seed round and maybe a bridge round. But you definitely have to ship product before you raise an A round. Okay, so put that into sort of perspective. So for startups that cannot ship on time, whether it's their fault or not, it's both a problem to the whole ecosystem and to a lesser degree to the VCs. I mean, VC could just walk away and not doing any investment, but for the whole ecosystem, more and more those kind of companies is actually harmful. It's actually harmful for the entire thing. So I don't know. That's just my opinion in general.
Okay, maybe let's switch back to Hardware Club.
Yeah.
So you're an exclusive platform. Only 1 out of 10 startups that apply get on board. So
yeah.
What criteria do you use to filter?
Yeah, so I think the criteria is definitely the usual stuff. Really interesting product. By the way, we have a fundamental barrier, which is you have to be post-prototype. So you cannot be pre-prototype. We don't deal with pre-prototype stuff in general. And then, so the product approach, what is the product? Why did you do it? And in general, why is it different? So in terms of difference, I'm not talking about a spreadsheet of like, this is my product and my 10 other competitors and check this, check that. No. I'm talking about in general, what's the when you start doing this product, what's the motivation? Why did you do it? And how did you nail that user experience? And why do you think that this is important in human beings' life? So this is one thing. Another thing is obviously the entrepreneurship. So the people we spend quite some time talking to entrepreneurs and trying to understand their motivation a little bit better. So we only invited good people because this is a community. We cannot allow arbitrage behaviors inside or like some people taking advantage of other people. And we also focus a lot on the sort of the initial traction. So most of the startups we deal with, they haven't shipped yet. It's by definition pre-seed and seed stage. But then even if you haven't shipped, today you have many tools that you can build in terms of like your Facebook followers, your email subscribers. Are the entrepreneurs able to do that? So those are very important today because that's what separates you from the big companies, because the big companies, they use the traditional channel, advertisement to acquire users. But in your case, you can actually build email subscribers. Let's say you build, that's actually one thing about crowdfunding. Now people don't understand. Crowdfunding is not about campaign. Crowdfunding is about building your followers, communicating to them all the time, and then convert, when you launch the campaign, convert the first batch of bakers from them. So let's say you somehow accumulated 10, 20,000 emails, communicate to them all the time, keep them informed about your project development, and then orchestrated the launch carefully with PR release and everything, and then drum roll, and then launch it, and then converted that 20,000 email subscribers into the first batch of your bakers. So take the same principle. You should be doing the same thing all the time, even after crowdfunding. You should be continue to build content marketing and attract people to give you their emails and communicate to them, and eventually be able to convert them into pre-order sales. And if you have that kind of numbers, and we always ask for that kind of numbers, it's not necessarily a criteria for people to join, but in general, if it's very, very weak, then we'll even if we don't doubt the product market fit, we will doubt the entrepreneurship part of entrepreneurs.
Do you think European founders are at disadvantage compared to Silicon Valley founders of hardware startups? Should we move to Silicon Valley, or whether it's not necessary?
So if you're doing consumer electronics, #1 market is United States, definitely. And many of our founders are European, but they were able to develop the market and really nail that. And we are living in a world where information flows so easily. I mean, all of you watch House of Cards and Game of Thrones and all that kind of stuff. If you're a consumer electronic partner, that's by default. So you have to do that. You have to attack the American market. And to do that, we actually, Howard Club has an office in San Francisco. We have about 13 to 14 tables that are already, it's all rented out. So many of our startups, actually, they send their CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, or even CEO. They just rented a table at our office, and they were able to stay close to the market and develop relationship with the local VCs and all that. So we help the startup do that. We might enlarge the space next year because it's just too many people wanting to have a presence in Silicon Valley in general. And so to answer your question, European founders actually have an advantage if they know that the #1 market is the United States. If they know that, if they don't tell me the bullshit that, oh, I'm going to develop my Finnish market first and then I'll go United States, or like my Norwegian market first and then go United States. No, because it's all about market size. So the advantage there is actually the Europeans they think a little bit differently from Americans. So Americans in general are quite utilitarianism, and so which means that the products could tend to be a little bit too obvious and too functional. But then again, they are very good in execution, so you can still see them like executing very fast. But many of the European startups we run into, they actually have pretty interesting product. It might not eventually be accepted by the market, but at least it's different. So if it's different, then we can start to talk. So if you have the European sort of like alternative view, contrarian view, combined with your, let's say, American-minded execution to go to the biggest market in the United States, which is called United States, then actually I think it's we can definitely help these kind of founders to get on a successful path and eventually to raise funds from Silicon Valley for A round, B round. We already have that. We have Print, so our portfolio company last year they raised a bridge round with GGV Capital from Silicon Valley, and the whole team moved to Silicon Valley now last year in October, and so that's doable. But you definitely have to focus on the largest market, at least for consumer electronics.
Okay. What do you think is the future of technology of Internet of Things in terms of connectivity? So,
I think I missed the previous sentence. Can you say that again?
Yeah. So basically, I'm asking dominate the market. Connectivity technology, Zigbee or mobile operators will come up with some solution, or all those other alliances that are being formed right now?
Okay, I guess I know your question now. So your question is the question that many of the semiconductor vendors are asking. So when people raise that question, people are asking they're asking for sort of a universal solution for all the devices, to talk to all the devices. That's the focus of many of the big corporates right now, trying to do that. I was a wireless design engineer, so I know the sort of the physics and science and engineering very well. I don't think there will be one standard that rules it all. It's not gonna happen. It's just the nature of communication. It's this actually Shannon theory and all that, and so and it's also a very political process. You know, standards is something that Qualcomm, my previous company, Qualcomm, Broadcom, I mean, they fought about, and this is standard war. I don't think the startup should spend too much time trying to, predict the future on this part. Even if you know that it's not gonna bring you any extra value, because everybody will know it. The startup should really focus on, in general, what are you trying to bring to the consumers, and so to bring that to consumers, what kind of options do you have? And given those options, which one is the one that's good enough? So again, connectivity is something that people don't really feel. I mean, for example, today Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are so mature, and when they're connected, you don't really feel that they're there. You don't. It's all stable enough. So make sure that you use the technology that is stable enough, that allows you to bring the things that you want to your consumers, whether it's long battery life, it's stable connection within the home, or stable connection within the community, or something like that. And focus on other parts where the consumers can perceive. So nobody would care whether your product is using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or any kind of connectivity. They just care if the product worked as advertised, and if I enjoy using it. Okay, so I wouldn't want to. I would probably won't spend a lot of time researching into which standard is going to win now. I'm going to invest in that standard. No, that's not the discussion here. Actually, the real discussion is, all those technologies are relatively cheap compared to the other opportunity cost, and if you don't have a good product market fit, you can have the best connectivity, but nobody would care. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question from one of our startups, and this is
one.
I think a little bit from technology to actually the management side of hardware startups. And our startup wants to know, what do you think are the most usual CEO mistakes and pitfalls that they make in the management, and that these startups should be aware of?
Okay. I love I love this kind of question, like top 10, top 3, whatever. People love it. Yeah. Okay, I think I want to speak in the context. So in this year, this context, so we know that there's a downturn now happening, and more unicorns are going through down rounds, or like even dying. I think this year, the CEOs, the biggest mistake would be number one would be to overestimate your ability to raise the next round. Okay, because your previous round could be last year, and you thought that you have built good traction, and you'll be able to continue to raise money. That might not be the case, because the whole the macro environment changed this year. And so if you make the mistake thinking that, I'll just be able to raise my B round or C round, just like when I raised my A round last year, or B round last year, then you're probably in trouble now. This year, the fundraising cycle will be much longer than last year, if you raise any money at all. So that would be like the biggest mistake the CEO could commit this year. Overconfident about and then they lose sight, and then the cash flow management is not good. The second thing is, I want to comment, I think a lot of people are talking about it, but this is it's inevitable. So overhiring, so especially American startups. And that's a tradition in the United States, where when you raise a lot of money, you have to hire a lot of people to justify yourself. I just want to give you one figure. So always measure yourself against that figure, and keep in mind, I mean, you don't have to outperform it. I mean, it's very difficult, but keep it in mind that some people were able to achieve that. When Fitbit hit IPO last year, their revenue in 2014 was about $745 million US. I think last year when they hit IPO, their global employee number is less than 600, if I remember correctly, 600, 700, give or take. Which means that when they hit IPO, it's very, very successful. So the number is apparently a high standard. Each employee contributes to about like 1 million, less than 2 million of revenue. So use that as a measuring stick. I mean, you might find a lot of reasons why you need to hire so many people, but then you take that into account and you start to think about, okay, my revenue this year is like 1 or 2 million. I'm having a team of like 40 people. It doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? What really drives my value? What's the value of my company? And then you take a hard look on that, and that really would help you put yourself in perspective, and bring the burn rate down, give you a little bit of runway to go to the next round. And let me try to come up with number 3. I think number 3 would be, let me see. would be to assume that things would be the same as before. It's a little bit like the first one. So I think it would be like, usually when you're having a group, if you don't have any group, then you're always in panic mode. That's a different story. But if you're having some traction, so we've seen some founders who have very, very good products, almost organic, effortlessly achieve $1 million in sales per year, but then the sales stagnate. But they didn't pay attention to that trend, and it's only after the fact that they realized, wow, we didn't grow last year. What happened? So that's kind of too late already. You miss 1 year of golden window of opportunity. So always understand why your monthly sales are going up or down compared to 1 year before. Is it growing? I mean, you see that kind of comparison in financial analysis all the time, but that's fundamental to it. Excluding the seasonal cyclicity, you should understand why your product is the product getting old. Do you need to roll out the next product in advance? Is it because the communication channel is wrong? What's your customer acquisition cost right now and all that? So don't just, of course, never feel that you're on a good track once you raise a big Kickstarter round. That happens very often because the product market fit might be just on Kickstarter. It might not be extended to a larger market. So always keep an eye, keep growing the metrics. And those are the things that you cannot hide, because when VCs are seeing the numbers, they ask you, so why didn't you grow last year or last quarter? At least you should have an answer. You shouldn't say, oh, I don't know, that's really bad. So at least you should have an answer. So always keep an eye on that. So never assume that if things are going well now, it's gonna go well in the future. I mean, I guess that's everyone should know that. Yeah.
And talking about teams, do you think hardware startups can survive without hardware people or CTO?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, we have one in our portfolio that is doing quite well without hardware engineer. So it depends on what kind of product you're doing. So today, a lot of the innovation happens in software. And so if your hardware design is relatively low, let's say low risk, then you don't necessarily need a hardware engineer in your team. I mean, you can work with consulting firms, you can work with your EMS company. So one thing I want to say, a lot of people don't know, EMS companies, full-stack EMS companies, their electronic design capability is much higher than any of the consulting firm you can work with, or design firm you can work with. When we talk about Foxconn, Pegatron, Quanta, if they are willing to work with you and give you their engineering resource, whether paid or unpaid, those are the engineers that were crucified by Sony, by Toshiba, by Panasonic, by HP, by Compaq. Those are really top tier engineers in terms of electronic design. Don't make that mistake assuming that your design firm is the only one that can do the job for you. So at some point, if you need an alternative strategy, EMS company could be a good option. Yeah. So if you take that angle, then in-house electronic or hardware design might not be that important. But assuming not having that, you actually deploy your resource on more important things like building the application that people really like, softwares, and building marketing machine that is working really well. It's not about cutting costs. It's about moving costs from something that can be outsourced or that can be shared with your EMS partners to something that's really, really core to your company's values. Yeah.
I have one question out of personal frustration. I'm an owner of Fitbit and quite a few other wearables. And I see that most of the products have very poor data integration and exchange, so that, maybe they serve a standalone purpose, but for the consumer, they don't serve, for the bigger purpose.
So the question is, you don't like the product, or
all of the products together do not make sense to me. They don't change my life at all.
Okay, yeah. So that's a philosophical question. I mean, changing the life. Well, I mean, I guess this is not to answer your question, but basically based on your question, to give all the audience sort of something to think about. Is it really important to change physically a person's life? So do you have to change everyone's life? That's the question, right? So So a lot of time I hear people saying, "Oh, but that's a niche market. That's not gonna go into, or no, I don't need it." So I hear that very often. This is an important opinion, so you have to take that into account. But at the same time, a lot of people didn't need GoPro initially. Even more people didn't need Facebook initially. Okay, so the dominant startup usually start with niche market. So for some people, it might not be something that they want, but you only need to have enough people that use your products to be successful and make them happy. And it's more important. Instead of focusing on, oh, but out of the 300 million people in the United States, only 250 million won't buy my stuff. Well, focus on the 50 million that might buy your stuff and make them happy. I mean, their numbers times the happiness is your value. Right? If you just try to convert all 300 million people and they're not happy, then what's the point? Right? There's no value in it. Yeah. I'm not criticizing your dislike of the devices. Maybe it's better for you to buy a Rolex.
Do you think it's easy to purchase data from various hardware startups, and is there such a practice? You know, maybe
I think the whole data thing is overblown. It's important in the grand scheme of things. But I think as a consumer electronic startup, you fundamentally have to sell the device. Data is very difficult to monetize. Just to let you know, very difficult to monetize. It will happen at some point. It will help a lot of people. It will even help the company. But if your main selling point is that I'm going to make every bit of the money out of the data, and most likely, at least me, most likely I won't invest in you. Yeah. So the data itself, there's a lot of things like privacy and how do you monetize the data. If you look at like the things you can monetize from the big data, there are not many so far. I mean, if you cannot even do those that are already monetizing, for example, advertisement or insurance, then the others are even more difficult. It won't happen now. It won't happen in 5 years. It won't happen in 10 years. And when it happens, maybe it's not you. It's gonna be the machine that will be processing the data and all that. So no, in general, I won't take data view on hardware startups basically. But it's good to have. If you have an extra cent, I mean, good to have.
Okay, and as we are hitting 1 hour, so probably the last one question to you, and this comes from our startup. So for the end, the success story of Hardware Club, not necessarily an exit, and did you and how did you, if you contributed to it?
The success?
The success story of Hardware Club.
Well, I guess in general, the hardware startups inside our club, they're really, really happy about having such a, let's say, a community that they can really leverage on, and it's been amazing. Like, look at, for example, one of our portfolio company, Print, without us intervening, they just decided to talk to Narrative Clip in Sweden and launch a co-marketing campaign. So they bundle their products, they merge the email database of the two companies and launch the campaign. And that's beautiful because this is about people, entrepreneurs helping out each other and actually helping out each other in terms of revenue and all that, which is amazing. I'm not saying it will happen all the time, but in general, the whole point of Hardware Club is just to allow entrepreneurs to have more options to go into attack different kind of challenges. I mean, if you just close your door and stay inside, you will never be able to really tackle all the challenges. I mean, even if you're Steve Jobs, you cannot do that. But by being in the community, so I think even many of them will be able to do pretty decent exit. So if not hundreds of millions, maybe tens of millions, but depends on their funding. It could be means a very good exit for the founder or something like that. But in any case, as long as they are moving toward the right direction, avoiding mistakes and really making their consumers happy, then we consider actually them as a success. For us, obviously, we are fund managers, so we have to generate return for our investors. But for them, I mean, this is entrepreneurship. I mean, don't think about the outcome. Don't use the potential outcome to condition your behavior. This is something that you burn in, it's burning inside you, and that's why you're doing this. Yeah.
Okay, Jerry. So thank you a lot. The hour flew by, so hour went by fast like that.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Probably you'll get more questions when everyone will receive
it. For sure. John and Danielle, they have my email. I welcome hardware startups to pitch me. So for sure, do get in touch with me. I'm always happy to talk.
Okay, so thank you a lot for your time and hopefully stay in touch.
Okay, stay in touch. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.